good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And I hope everyone's safe, doing well, and enjoying this great weather in your home offices. Okay, today we're going to be talking about employment brand and recruitment marketing in the era of COVID-19. All right, some of the things that you'll learn in this webcast, what it takes to succeed as an employment brand and recruitment marketing practitioner during the pandemic, how to use data to better understand what's happening with your brand, how to continue to manage your brand internally with current employees, and which parts of your employment brand strategy matter less today and which matter more. All right, so jumping in, we are actually going to start with the poll. The question is, does EB still matter during a pandemic like COVID? All right, and we'll give this just a minute or two here to see what everyone thinks. Let's see, a few folks are a little hesitant there with unsure. All right, Ben, I think we're all set. Okay. Clearly being an EB practitioner, I think it's extremely important. You have a strong yes from me. It matters to me more than ever before, I think especially for the industry. What you do now will definitely impact your brand for years to come. You don't want to be a brand, especially your employer brand, who is not cognizant to the fact that we are in the middle of a pandemic and not telling your story. Just because if you're in a hiring freeze or you're just not sure what to do, it doesn't mean you stop telling your story, sharing your employer brand. Employer brand should be taken center stage. A lot of companies are not selling, they're not hiring, and that story, sharing your culture, is really going to resonate with your audience. Next one here, what does it take to succeed as an EBRM practitioner during the pandemic? In my personal opinion, you need to be creative. This requires you to think outside the box. Definitely don't be afraid to go against the grain. You're going to go against a lot of norms that may not seem, may put you into a box. So you don't want to be that person that's doing that. Second, you want to be smart. Engage with all of your internal stakeholders. Get a pulse of what's going on. Learn, what works, what doesn't work. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to other industry experts. There's a lot of folks that are, in different various groups, organizations that connect about EB and RM, and you should definitely seek out help from them. 3 on there, don't be tone deaf. Keep an eye and a pulse out on what's going on around the world. You can be creative and smart, but if you come across as tone deaf and insensitive, you'll be doing yourself no favors at all. And the last one here is to be proactive. If being proactive wasn't already one of the key things that you had to do as an EB RM practitioner, you need to be even more proactive than ever before. Don't just sit there and wait for things to show up in your inbox or for work to be thrown your way by internal stakeholders. Utilize email, Teams, Slack, Yammer if you use that as well, and even Zoom to continue to tell the story of your employer brand. Next, how should your EB and employee advocacy be managed during the pandemic? So before jumping into that, I found this really great image graphic from Stories Incorporated. Huge shout out to them. Thank you for letting me share this. But this really tells, for me as an EB practitioner, like what your EB should be about. It's ultimately stories plus culture equal your talent brand and employer brand. Those are both the same. Organizations call them, different things, but it all goes down to employer brand. And your stories really reinforce your culture and build talent brand. Regardless of how you shape it, this is how you should handle your brand if there is a pandemic, if you're hiring, if you're not hiring, whatever the case may be, this all goes hand in hand. Okay, so managing your employer brand. I can speak to this on a personal level because we at Informatica were in the position of where we were not hiring, and now we are hiring. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum, but if you're not hiring, avoid posting jobs. Definitely evergreen recs or pipeline recs. It may seem like the greatest idea to keep that out there to show people that you still care about them and you are eventually going to hire for these positions, but the numbers are up there. We are at 20 plus million unemployed folks here in the United States alone. Obviously more across the globe, but putting that requisition out there is number one, just making for it's bad for your employer brand, it's bad for the candidate experience, and you are going to more or less drive folks away from wanting to work with you, given what you've done with those evergreen and pipeline recs. Also, with that, you want to pause your job ads. The last thing you can be doing is showing, hey, we're hiring, we're a great place to work, and they click on that ad, they go to your career page, and there's nothing there for them to look at. I would consider leveraging your culture videos, existing content, employee spotlights, team videos, something just to keep your brand out there and alive, and that show that your audience that, hey, you haven't given up on them. Third on here, update your messaging. It's definitely okay to admit that you're not hiring. A lot of high profile companies and brands have done this, and it's okay to be vulnerable. Update your messaging, not just on your career page, but also on your social channels, your Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and your reputation sites such as Zing, Glassdoor, Indeed, and Comparably. Okay, now managing your employer brand and leveraging social. A lot of great things you can share now is if you're, going out there and providing any community efforts during COVID, donations, volunteering, or if you have employees, giving back in any shape or form, as well as tips. Work from home tips seems to be a key one that a lot of companies are pushing out there on their channels. Recruitment tips and resume help. That is definitely a key thing that your talent acquisition team can do. Because right now they're probably not hiring. They're probably just sourcing a boatload of talent. And why not use them as a source? Give them back to your individual networks. I would say most likely LinkedIn, and help out those that are in need. There's a lot of folks who are unemployed, and your TA team can definitely be of assistance. Along with that, you can also share your team and culture videos. Also, office location articles and videos. I think that's going to change a little bit from when I created the slide, just because you have a lot of companies that are switching to the permanent work from home, or where a strong percentage of the folks are not working in the office, but still something great that you can share. Also, your employee and team spotlights. Just because you're not hiring doesn't mean you can't focus on the great employees that are still working there and the teams that are working there. That's helpful as you're going to have job seekers who are going to look at this stuff. And when the hiring does pick up and you have roles out there, they're going to apply, they're going to look at these employees, possibly connect with them, and then look at the teams and, see if those are teams they want to join from the teams that they were just let go from. Also with that, you want to look at partnership articles. And when I'm talking about partnership articles, a lot of brands are connected with Glassdoor, Fairy Godboss, Indeed. And if you've been featured in any of the, articles, for example, partner diversity, top 20 companies hiring like crazy, or if you featured your leader in the hiring process, stuff that really hones in on that. I mean, it's still great content to share and does not die off right away. It's still very useful. Okay, now if you are hiring, you want to be intentional with your job postings. Avoid, again, evergreen recs and pipeline recs. Even though you are constantly sourcing for those individuals, you're setting false expectations. And there's nothing worse. I've been on the back end of that as well, trying to apply for requisitions and finding out, hey, later, months later, you're getting a email saying, hey, you didn't qualify for this position, yet the position is still out there. Take those off. Be very intentional with what you're doing. If there's not a body to fill, or if there's not a team that's actually hiring, avoid putting that out there. Second, you want to reconsider your job ads. If you're having folks in the office in the photos, I would stop doing that. Also, just be very considerate. Don't be tone deaf with the audience that you're sharing with. Along with that, also update your messaging internally and externally. This goes through with your looking at your interview guides, the messaging that your recruiter is sharing, career page, ATS, social channels, reputation sites, anything you can think of that would be impacted by your employer brand, your candidate experience. You want to make sure you fix that ASAP. And leveraging your social if you're hiring. Again, you can still share a lot of the same content that you would be sharing if you were not hiring. So community efforts, tips, culture videos, employee spotlights, again, partnership articles. Obviously, you can take a different approach because you are hiring versus not hiring, but a lot of the same stuff will still work. All right, so moving on to your employee advocacy program. And the reason I put this slide in here is while some employer brands and companies may have this program, a lot of companies don't. So just to break it down as quick as possible, your employee advocacy program really is just the promotion of your company and your employer brand by the best ambassadors that you have, the people that work there. And just remember that your employee advocacy program is an extension of your EB, and it's a way to activate and actively grow your EB as well. All right, and I mean, you're all probably wondering, okay, employee advocacy program, why does it still matter, and why should I leverage it? Honestly, I mean, you want to leverage most of the content that you would otherwise share on your social channels. Your employees are pushing that out there, so instead of them just going to your main company page, your life app page, you still want to have them out there. They're the individuals who are actually connected with a lot of the folks who are impacted by COVID-19, and will see this and it'll resonate with them. Along with just sharing the content you would be sharing across your social channels, you want to throw in some industry content that's relevant to COVID. It could be things such as, okay, interviewing in the new virtual age, the new norm, how to stay positive and productive during COVID-19 while working from home. Along with that, you don't want to let fall to the wayside. It's definitely an important tool. Second key thing is you've already paid for it. Most budgets are on hold, and you're probably not getting any new vendors approved. So you have it there; it's paid for. You might as well put it to use. And then as well, your EB has a story to tell. You have existing brand ambassadors who are passionate about the company, and if they are still passionate with what your leadership is doing and what your company is doing as a whole, they are going to be more than happy to share this with their networks. All right. So what can I do? What can a company do with talent now to get ahead when the storm passes? Key thing is always going to be communicate, 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 especially with external talent. What you want to do is be transparent as possible. Be honest if a requisition is on hold. If the requisition is no longer available, whether it's due to COVID-19 or whether there were changes prior to that or even at the moment, let them know. And there's nothing worse than simply just being turned away from a job, and then the end result is going to be a pretty tasty review for you to look at on Glassdoor or Indeed. Also, if the overall recruitment process will take longer than usual, maybe you had to cut some folks loose on the TA team, or there's hiring managers with schedule conflicts, let them know that. Also, if you're canceling an interview because of COVID, let them know too. Anything, if it may be canceled for technical reasons, it's okay to be honest with that. Please share that with them. And also, key thing, as mentioned before, and pretty much mentioned all over social, people will remember how you treated them during COVID-19. You can't just cancel their interviews, give them lame excuses, and then expect them to turn around and apply and work for you once everything eventually clears up and goes back to what might be the new norm. Along with that, don't sugarcoat things. And this is with your internal team. Let them know exactly what's going on. Your leadership should be letting folks know, hey, we're going to hold off on, either we're holding off on opening a new office, we're holding off on hiring a brand new team, we're holding off on giving you your bonus, whatever the case may be. Let them know. Be honest about it. Share the game plan with everyone as well. If there's a long-term plan to go back into the office, let them know that. If you have no idea what's going to go on and you're still playing it day by day, let them know that as well. Third thing here, be supportive and be flexible. Most companies, have already had the ability to work remote, but let them know that, okay, if they're working remote, hey, we're going to help you out. We have maybe a virtual hangout room where you can go there, you can talk to individuals, you can, kind of continue that camaraderie that was there when you were in the office. Or if they're struggling, hey, offer some EAP sources, your HR benefit partners. But also, if they don't have a monitor, they don't have a desk, be a voice of reason to help them out. And lastly, here, nurture your talent. It's not just the external talent that you should be worried about. If you are treating your existing talent the wrong way, they're not looking at internal mobility. They're going to look at an external option and leave the company when a great option becomes available. All right, moving on to the latest EB trends and the future of the industry. The key things, in my opinion, are authentic videos. While it's great to have well-produced videos, it seems like the most logical route. It does come across as fake and fabricated to job seekers. Along with that, you probably don't have much of a budget to work with given the pandemic situation. So what I would say are some great alternatives if you are not comfortable with using any of the Adobe products or iMovie, is All True, Video My Job. Also Stories Inc., a quick little plug-in for them too. They just introduced a new virtual feature. And then also a great company out of the UK, Sauce. So aside from Stories Inc., the other products that I mentioned allow you to upload your video, edit that, slap your logo on there, push it out. While it's somewhat produced, it doesn't look like you had a film crew coming there. So it's great. Definitely something to look into. Second on the list, better job descriptions. You should be including, with that, more branding along the lines of photos, videos, making that more engaging and just more of an enhanced experience for your job seekers. Lastly here, data and AI. Data is crucial, especially with your EB. It gives you a better chance to understand your employer brand, if it's working or not, and also your candidates. Tools such as Tableau, which we use at Informatica, Google Data Studio, or even your ATS, which I know it's surprising to hear, but a lot of ATSs are actually really great at giving you data in terms of the sources, where folks are coming from, and they can tell you a lot about your talent community. Now with that, they can tell you where they're coming from. If they're coming from your career page, if they're coming from LinkedIn, if you're tracking, the correct source IDs, assuming that, or if they're coming from Indeed, Facebook, Instagram, you want to know where they're coming from. Secondly, you want to look and see, where's also like if that source is providing a good source of talent. Your data can provide you with that. You can see anything from, okay, if you're tracking things correctly, assuming that okay, you're having great sources from Facebook, Indeed. Okay, maybe sources are coming, your job seekers are coming from Reddit, but they're probably not making it past the first interview stage. But maybe the folks from LinkedIn are coming through and they are making it all the way to offer stage. That's helpful information to have, and you want to understand that data. Also, and I've jumped the gun here, the quality of your talent. So along with sources, you understand the quality. Definitely a key thing you want to bring back to your internal stakeholders to share more about the EB and just where all the talent's coming from. And also, it's a better way to understand your two key metrics: your cost per hire and your cost per applicant. Because if you are, still pumping your EB out there in recruitment marketing, you want to be able to share how much of a difference you're making. And the biggest way to share that, and it always resonates with your internal stakeholders, is you're lowering the cost per hire and the cost per applicant. Saving that money goes a long way to help everybody out. All right, moving on to the future of the industry. I definitely see more adoption of employer brand as a whole. It's come a long way in Europe, EMEA, but it's not quite here in the States. It's still, some companies have taken it serious. Some companies see it as more of a nice to have, cute thing that, will drive in and share, photos of the company or the people that work there. But more adoption still has yet to happen and will happen. Along with that, a bigger seat at the table. You won't just be seen as the one guy, though, one guy or girl or whoever that will be, called to share content to find a quick fix to a hiring need. You're actually going to have a seat at the table. You'll be able to speak to those internal stakeholders, not just the managers, but the VPs, the directors, the C-level suite, and let them know exactly what's going on. And here, this isn't just specifically with the EB and RM, organization agility. Things will change permanently for EB and other industries. You're not just going to be, stuck in an office. People are going to be working remote. There's going to be psychological ramifications that come from the pandemic, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Moving on here. Another thing you can do to just really get ahead is to solidify your candidate experience. If you haven't done so, I mean, my best suggestion is to make a fake profile in your ATS. See how good or how bad it is. Chances are there's a lot of opportunity to fix what's there, and you should always be looking at it. But you can go ahead and enhance your interview process. If you haven't decided on a vendor to go with, whether it be Zoom or Google Meet, definitely get that solved. That should have, if it hasn't been solved today, it should have been solved already. But get that down, outline the process correctly so it's not anything that's going to confuse your candidates. Also, just make the application process easier, internally and externally. If I'm working, if you and I are working at a company internally, it should be as simple as going to your internal career page, clicking on the requisites you want to apply for and applying. Externally, take the problem out of everything. You shouldn't need to register your LinkedIn account, but still attach your cover letter, still attach your resume. That's going to turn people off. People are going to be applying like crazy for a lot of the open requisitions, a lot of strong talent out there. You want to make sure they get in and out of the door as quick as possible. And then overhauling the candidate onboarding, whether it be your NHL, your new hire orientation, training, equipment, any way that you can make that process better than what it was either before the pandemic or during the pandemic, switch it up, make it better, make it as fluid as possible. All right, thank you. Jenny, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks, Alex. It looks like we do have some questions in the Q&A already, but I invite everybody to go ahead and type any additional questions you might have for Alex in the chat, and we have plenty of time to go through those. So, Alex, one of the questions here, people are wanting you to repeat the names of some of those video companies you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. So, Altru, ALTRU, and then Video My Job. It's all one word, but the V is capitalized, the M and the J. And then Stories Incorporated has, so it's Stories and then INC. And the last one is Sauce, SAUCE.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
I was looking at the Stories Incorporated website a little earlier today, and they had an article on there about the importance of sharing employee stories, not just employee testimonials. So not just the, hey, it's great working here, but actual stories. And I'm wondering how you've seen that play out, especially during COVID.
I think it's big, and relying on what we've done at Informatica specifically, we have shared two main pieces. One with our head of TA in Australia, and she just shared how she was dealing with the new norm, with kids being at home, talking to job seekers and interviewing from via Zoom instead of in the office. And that really resonated well with our audience, just looking at me sharing that individually on my LinkedIn, but also through Bamboo, which is our employee advocacy program. And the numbers are great. People really buy into that. Like the employee spotlight stuff is good too, but when you're focusing on how the employees are actually giving back their stories and interacting with their local communities, that really makes a difference. Along with that, we shared another one where we had one of our engineers actually go through and compile the data to help out a county in the Bay Area of California actually better understand their COVID numbers and to make it more accurate. And that really helped out as well. But I think sharing those individual stories, assuming you can get them, and the reason why I say that is you may have folks that are comfortable sharing that, but there's also a big thing called GDPR, which is pretty much the right to be forgotten privacy regulations. And while that's not quite here yet in the States, it's out there in Europe if you have offices or teammates there. So you want to be cognizant of that fact and make sure you get approval before sharing anything with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the stories certainly do humanize things, don't they?
I agree. Yeah, because it's great for your company to be putting out updates to say, hey, this is what we're doing, or your CEO says, hey, we're gonna guarantee jobs to this point. That's good, but okay, how are the actual employees that work there? How are they being impacted? What can they bring to the table? What can they share with potential job seekers? And I think that means a lot.
Certainly. Well, Abigail asked, what would be an example of being tone deaf in a job ad for those of us who are hiring?
Well, probably the biggest slam dunk on that to see what not to do is if you have two people conversing together or working side by side in an office. That's probably not the office we're all going back to. We're probably going to have masks on or have that plexiglass in between. So I would avoid sharing that. That's just going to send the wrong message.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then kind of the flip side of that, Reem asked, what are some top companies in the US who have done employee branding well?
I think, and this is not just because I know a few of the folks on the team at Indeed, but I think they've done a pretty phenomenal job. Also, man, I'm trying to think of another one here. Acadia, it's not Acadia Homes, but they put together, so Indeed put together a resource to help out folks use their page. So this is more of a mix of the employer branding and the product marketing. But they put together a page to help people search for jobs the right way. Also, to help them, to reach individuals who can assist them, their own team, and just overall, it was just a whole landing page to help you out because you have a lot of folks who are back on the market unexpectedly, and they were at their companies for 5 to 6 years, and as we all know, searching for a job now versus back then has changed. But along with them, I apologize. The last part of Acadia is failing me here, but Ashley Walls works for them, a really great individual, and they put together a whole interview packet in terms of what to expect when going through their interview process. And that touches, your employer brand, candidate experience all together. And it was just something really, really good that it's not tone deaf. It resonates with today's job seekers.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think everybody appreciates that. I'm sure on the company side, it helps them to get even better candidates and people who really know what to expect.
Agreed.
So, one of the things you mentioned and you said it a couple of times, and it really resonated with me, is that people will remember how you treated them during COVID. And that applies to external candidates as well as your current employees. And it strikes me that also weaves in with what you were saying about kind of those employee ambassadors, your employee advocacy programs. Could you speak a little more to that?
Yeah. So to external and internal, or which one specifically?
Either.
Okay. I mean, to me, I'm big on that. I think it does matter. And it's as simple as taking it back to maybe an experience that you've had with, a consumer brand outside of work, right? If I go to the down here in Texas, we have HEB here, everything's better. And if if I go there and I'm, treated the wrong way, especially during the pandemic, I want to keep that in mind because the way that they've treated me as a customer is going to resonate with me for, days, months, years to come. And I'm going to either keep going back there. Maybe I'll push it aside and say, hey, it wasn't a big deal. Or maybe it mattered to me that much. Maybe I wanted to go there and feel safe and that wasn't what happened, or, bad interaction with their staff. And that's going to stop me from going there. But, internally with your companies, you don't want to just say, okay, hey, we're all, make it seem like you're all about profit. You don't care about the actual employees themselves, and you're not sharing anything with them, because they are your internal customers. We say stakeholders, but they are your internal customers, and you should be treating them, with honestly love and respect. Nothing changes about that. And then with your external audience, you can't just, not. I would say you can't just, throw anything out there and feel, hey, you know what, we have X amount of followers or X amount of people in our talent community. They're just going to pretty much take whatever we say is golden and, not care about it. I can tell you right now, the main question that people are going to ask you either now or after this all clears up is, what did you do during COVID-19? Did you give back to your community? How did you treat your employees? Did you lay people off? Did you cut back on anything? And if you can't answer those questions and you're hiding that from them, they're going to find out one way or another. It's a small world when it comes down to certain industries. And aside from that, people can look, there's ways of looking on your Glassdoor and Indeed to kind of, paint that story or tell that story in terms of what you did during the pandemic.
That's so true. It's very easy to find things out these days with social media,
I agree.
both positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex, earlier you mentioned that people are experiencing budget constraints and resource constraints. So what might be some free things that people can do to create content during the pandemic? And I would encourage, any of you out there in the audience, if you have any suggestions you want to type into chat along with that, please do so.
Yeah. So, and I say this from the perspective that, most people who jump into EB and RM to begin with, you're not given much budget at all, right? It's a brand new fancy thing that companies are just taking on. So you have to be creative, but moving forward to the pandemic, using your best resource, which is your ambassadors, your advocates internally. They have stories to tell. I mean, they're stuck at home. They're either stuck at home by themselves or with their kids, with their pets. They have a story to share. And now it's become okay, within 24 hours of the pandemic, it's become okay to share, how you interact with your kids or your pets in your home office. So reaching out to them via, if you're using Slack, Teams, or just email, and just see, hey, what's going on? How are you holding up? Or entice them in terms of, we have an internal system called applause, and I give back applause points. So for individuals, who are willing to share their content with me, I give them applause points. So they're willing to tell their story. I get that back in return. But aside from that, just quick wins you can push out there is, just go through your social channels. Look at whatever you may have. Like if your messaging is, off point, fix it, update that. Or just whatever, any other departments across the company are doing. If there's a way, maybe it may not be employer brand specific, find a way to tell that story and flip it around. So it could be an internal comms. Take that internal comms and push it out externally. Just because it was shared internally does not mean you can't push it out there externally to your audience.
Oh, interesting. So look for ways to kind of repurpose what you already have and could make into an employee branding asset.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's times too where you may have teammates who don't they don't know the difference between your product marketing, your recruitment marketing, and employer brand. So they're sharing that stuff with the internal comms team. So if you don't have that relationship with them, you should be developing that. I would say as soon as possible. Be able to work together, because what they're sharing internally can easily be pushed externally. But I mean, nothing venture, nothing gain. If you don't reach out to them, they're not going to know you exist, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges either you're experiencing at Informatica or that you've
Hmm.
observed others with sharing content like this during the pandemic?
I think honestly, one of the biggest challenges is going to be your leadership. If your leadership just feels, hey, let's not do anything, it's going to be seen as tone deaf if we share something, regardless of what it is. Then that's gonna impact your employer brand. It's gonna impact everything across the board. But if you have buy-in from the leadership and they're like, you know what, hey, we want to be out there. We want to show that we're making a difference with our products, with our people, with how we hire, how we, everything else, how we go to market. Then I think you're in a good position. But that's the one thing that's really gonna hold you back.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true of so many aspects of business as well,
Hmm.
not just employee branding. Um, so you mentioned you shared some resources related to videos that,
Yeah.
I think our participants here are very interested in. Any other suggestions on how people can find and generate content right now?
Yeah, I mean, a simple option if you're not playing with the budget is have people record themselves on Zoom. Zoom automatically. So if you put yourself into your own meeting, assuming you have access, record that. After you're done, it'll turn that into an MP4 file. That MP4 file can then be sent over to your employer brand team or recruitment marketing team, and then they can put that together using iMovie. Canva.com is also putting together some video options. So that's probably a little easier to work with. You just simply upload your videos into there. And then iMovie, which is a lot of plug and play as well, a little more sophisticated versus Canva. But back to how you can record that outside of Zoom, if you're using Skype, you can do that as well. Or everybody has, your mobile devices record at an incredible rate, and just the quality is amazing too. So using your iPhone, using your Android device, recording something for 30 seconds to a minute, that will automatically give you something great to work with. And it could be something as simple as, maybe if your team is doing a push-up challenge, or a quick little boomerang in terms of a person, working in their remote office, a photo of them and their family, their dogs, or the view from outside. That stuff is golden. It's not doesn't need to be highly produced, but all that can go together and really just help out your employer brand.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and I thought it was interesting that people find those types of videos more authentic than the, slick produced videos.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, the natural assumption is if you are, if you have a highly produced video, great quality and everything too, the person sitting there, they're clearly dressed up for the occasion. They're reading off a script, or they
Hmm.
wrote the answers to the questions before. Someone has the sheet there, they're reading it. That's to me, that's not authentic. You're not really being yourself. But someone, who number one, I will say, takes a lot of courage to record yourself and put it out there. But if they're doing that on their phone or their computer, I mean, that's probably as authentic as you can be. They're not, spoofing up the background by any means. I mean, maybe outside of having a Zoom background, but that's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. These are really practical tips for people.
No problem.
Any other things that you think people should consider most important things to keep in mind when it comes to kind of keeping that employer brand out there and alive in this time?
Um, I think just ask yourself what you would be looking for out of a potential company that you would go work for, or any of the consumer brands. If you feel, hey, if they're if they've kind of gone like they've kind of hit their brand, they're not putting themselves out there. If you're okay with that and how they have handled things, then I mean, great. I guess that's your strategy, but I think you're going to be left behind in the dust. I mean, I would say look at it from that standpoint, but also just if you're a job seeker, ask yourself, what would you want to see? I mean, for me, quite honestly, that's been the one thing that has guided me along my employer brand and recruitment marketing journey is I jumped in with no experience. I went from IT to insurance to a digital agency So I could do all those different things along with customer service, but I never applied that to recruiting folks and putting that out there to make a company seem as the place to be. So just looking at that from a job seeker standpoint, that's what has guided me all the way. Just ask yourself what you'd want to see, and if you're comfortable with what's out there, and you'll know if it works. If it doesn't work, then I mean you got to go back to the drawing board then.
Good advice, to be sure. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
We appreciate your sharing these tips and your knowledge with us today. And I want to just remind all of our HCI members that our webcast today has been approved for HRCI and SHRM credit, as well as HCI recertification. And your credits for attending this webcast will soon show up in your My HCI profile under the transcript tab. While you're there, don't forget to check out hci.org, where we have even more free content, as well as information on our certifications and events. I want to say one more thank you today to Alex, our presenter, and to Cornerstone, our underwriter. And I'd also like to thank all of you out there, our webcast viewers, for spending this time with us. We'll see you next time.